Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's episode number 62 of the Audible Farm Podcast. This week's episode is brought to you by Couchtown Coffee. Hey, you know what's really awesome? I got a package from Couchtown Coffee this morning, and there was coffee in it. That's right, whole bean coffee, roasted to perfection, shipped to my house. I'm drinking some right now. It's absolutely amazing. It's my favorite coffee. You know what? It's just one of those things in today's world. Everybody gets everything bought, shipped to your house. Why not buy coffee? Why not ship it to your house? There's a huge influx of people buying and selling local these days as well. So why not support the best coffee in Iowa? Couchtown Coffee is my favorite. You can get it shipped to your house. You can go to their website, www.couchtowncoffee.com. You can find a coffee you like in the Our Coffee section, make an order, and they will ship it to your house. It's a pretty awesome thing. And you know what's even cooler than that? They'll offer 20% off just because you're listening to this podcast this week. So anytime between, it'll be November 21st and November 27th of 2019, you can use the code word Strangebird. The code word Strangebird, and that will get you 20% off of your order at Couchtown Coffee, and they'll ship it to your house. Thanks, Couchtown. Why is the code word Strangebird this week? Because I'm sitting down with the owner, and I guess we could also call him the recording engineer at Strangebird Recordings, Travis Atkinson. This was a podcast, mind you, that I had kind of attempted to do a while back, but I didn't have the knowledge and know-how and the technology to do something over the internet as well as I've been able to do lately. And Travis kind of let me slide on it for a while, and then when I was looking for a podcast interview this week, he said, "Hey, why don't we try that Skype thing?" And you know what? It worked out great. I couldn't have had a better time sitting down talking with Travis. Talking with people I don't know is always kind of nerve-wracking, but at the same time, you also get to meet people you never thought you would have got to meet. It just kind of opens up all of these doors that otherwise wouldn't be opened if you close yourself off. And we talk about things like that in this podcast, as well as how he got started doing recording things, what kind of drives him to do that. He ended up moving at one point in time from Iowa to Nashville to do some recording engineering stuff out there. Moved back to Iowa. He's going to fire up Strangebird Recording full tilt, hopefully by the end of the year or sometime next year. This episode is amazing. We talk about all sorts of things. We get into the topics quite a bit deeper than most podcasts that I've done, but it's a great listen. So I had such a good time sitting down talking with Travis Atkinson, not only about his recording, but about his journey from Iowa to Nashville and back to Iowa, and just everything in between. It was a really, really good time sitting down talking with him, getting to know him, and I can't wait to do another podcast with him. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you like this one as much as I did. This is Travis Atkinson with episode number 62 of the Audible Farm Podcast.
It's the Audible Farm Podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
I'm sitting down today via Skype with Travis Atkinson, and you've come up once before in the podcast, but I know that you have recorded several bands in the past. So we had gotten in touch. I don't know whether or not you saw me or I saw you, or somebody from one of the Atomo area bands had recommended you and I talk, but somehow we had gotten in touch, and I had not figured out how to do a Skype podcast and do it well, so I didn't want to do it. And I ended up figuring it all out, and you got in touch, and here we are. We're finally sitting down together and doing this talk here. So this is great. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. You interviewed, I think I first came to know about what you're doing via the John Rowell interview.
Yeah.
Dude over in Ottumwa. Long time. I've known John for a long time. We're not close buds, but we've he used to, when I had my first studio, his old band played at a studio party I mean, this was well over 10 years ago. And anyway, I just knew of him from, him playing guitar because, it's a small scene here in Southern Iowa. So, so, folks. And so, yeah, I knew it via that. And, I thought it was cool. So I got in touch and said hello, So.
Yeah.
It's cool, it's cool thing you're doing.
I mean, you've been one of the people that, like, we've had a little bit of contact back and forth through email and a couple text messages here and there. And I think one of the coolest things that that you did for me as somebody that just wants to kind of sit down and get to know you better, you told me a little bit about yourself, and it was fun because you sent me a thing that's just, it's like a sentence, like, when I was about this age I was doing this stuff, when I was about this age I was doing this stuff, and it's very basic, so it's gonna be this
right.
fun little outline for us to follow. Hallelujah, dude, it seems like you've had a crazy life. You started recording stuff when you were like 18ish. What was the first thing that made you, that like sparked in your mind that was just like, oh, okay, I gotta go buy something to record something? What was the first thing? Because there had to be something.
Yeah, there was. I started playing guitar when I was about 16. My dad played guitar, he was a country kind of guitar player like Johnny Cash and
Cool.
Waylon Jennings and stuff, that type of thing. So like cool stuff. You don't appreciate it when you're 16, but as you're older, you certainly do. And so anyway, I see my dad, plunking on a guitar around the house, and I was like, classic thing, like, Dad, teach me how to play, And he eventually did, and so I learned how to play, and somehow, I think a revolving theme of my life, period, is just a healthy dose of curiosity about whatever I'm, into. Whether it was like skateboarding, I started skating when I was like 13, and that took me into a world of hardcore punk, like Minor Threat and the Dead Kennedys and all that stuff.
Cool.
And and all that. I mean, we could have a 5-hour podcast, about all that stuff. But yeah. So guitar playing turned into being curious about. I was like, man, I want to see what it sounds. What do I sound like? You know what I mean? Because you never really know exactly what you sound like, and the mirror doesn't lie, as they say.
Yeah.
So I had a boombox, this dates me, I'm 43 years old, so it's like I had a boombox, a cassette boombox, and so I was like, it was a double cassette boombox, so it's two side by side. So I grabbed a tape, put tape over the tabs, stuck it in there. It's probably like I taped over some whatever, some recipes on tape or something, whatever, and just taped over whatever and just jammed, Mm-hmm. And then I realized, whoa, I can put that tape in the other tape and then record at the same time and mix them together.
Whoa.
This is like an age-old thing. You interview a lot of old engineers like my age, or older, and they have that same story where it's like they discover what's called sound on sound, right? Which is called overdubbing nowadays.
Okay.
And so that's how I did it, and I was just stoked. I was beyond stoked. So fast forward a little bit, I had some friends, a guy named Dave Johnson, lifelong friend of mine, and he was in this death metal band when he was like 13 or 14, and this band called Wicked Minister, and so they recorded at this local studio in Ottumwa called Studio 16 with this guy named Chris Hunter. And Chris Hunter, actually, he'd be a great guy for you to interview. He's kind of a cornerstone of the Ottumwa music scene, if you will, as far as providing people with a place to record prior to everybody having a recording studio on their laptops. This was back when, tape machines ruled the world, and, studios cost a lot of money to record, and that was your option.
Yeah, they relatively took up a lot of space, though, too, didn't they? It wasn't just something you could have, like you said, with the laptop. It's not just, you can't just drag it around with you. Right.
And, I've stuck in that kind of world. I have kind of the best of all the worlds as far as, I've built up my studio over the course of 20 years, and so I like recording on tape, and I also have a Pro Tools rig. I also have a console and all that sort of thing. But anyway, regardless, so how I got involved or interested in recording was my friend's band, Dave's band, recorded an EP with Chris in Ottumwa. And I heard about this, and I was like, I don't know what that is. It's like a recording studio. I was like, what? It's like must be a really nice boombox. It's like, I didn't know what it was, It must be a sick boombox. And so my parents, this was well before I drove, and my parents were going to Ottumwa. I live in Centerville, which is a very, very southern Iowa. Ottumwa's about 45 minutes northeast of me. So my parents were going over there for like shopping or something. And so I begged for them to stop by the studio. I was like, could we stop by the studio? My friend Dave is recording it in there. I want to see what it looks like. And so they were cool enough to do that. We stopped by. I knocked on the door. I had no idea. Like, you don't knock on a door at a studio,
Yeah.
But like, I go there, like I knock on the door, and Chris opens the door, and I hear this drum machine with this like blast beat, like this cheesy blast beat on a like a Kurzweil keyboard drum machine, like straight up 98, And no, it was before that, straight up 91 probably. But so I see that, and then I walk in, and like Chris kind of like looks at me, and he kind of looks over at the keyboard, and he kind of motions at me, and I'm like, I go over and I push stop, and he's like, yeah. And I'm like, holy shit, like what just happened? I didn't know what was going on. I walked in, there's like a mixing console, this big mixing console that had this tape machine. I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. And I have to say that was 100% what got me super curious about recording, what this whole recording thing was.
Yeah.
And
dude,
that was it.
Like I have the same exact kind of a story. Like a buddy of mine went to a studio, and this is something we were talking about before. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is something we were talking about before we started recording, where you were talking about how you have analog things, and I've actually only one other time seen an analog recording studio. Not that they're non-existent, but they're not as common.
Yeah, they're not common.
So there's a place in Otho that's like near-ish to Fort Dodge that has a recording studio.
What is it? Something's Barn?
Junior's Motel?
Junior's Motel, that's right. There's like cows underneath it.
Yeah, something like that, man. It's a nice place. It's one of those things where the first time I went in there and saw somebody with tape, they're actually running tape on reels, I was kind of just like, what is going on?
Yeah, it really reinforces things, like we're so used to computers and you can do everything on your phone. You could record an album on your phone if you wanted to.
Yeah.
I know people that have done it, and it's rad. It's completely cool, But yeah, there is something that kind of solidifies the seriousness of what you're about to do when you walk into a room. There's a console, and then there's tape machines, and you're like, this is not stuff that just like my buddy's going to go get at Guitar Center for $1,000. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not dissing any of that. I think it's totally cool, but I'm just saying it's a different architecture of sorts. It's just a different way. And it's a different mindset for sure.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, look, I don't know. I totally get what you're saying, because there's some of it. Each set of the way you could record things has its own limitations, which brings out the creativity and what you can do with it, and that's kind of
for sure. Yeah.
That's what the gist you're getting at.
Yeah, and I think the thing is with analog tape is, I've dedicated a lot of years learning how to. It's not a matter of just the thing with tape and doing things in an analog manner. It's not as simple as just simply hitting Apple spacebar on your laptop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or hitting 3 or something, and Pro Tools goes in to record. You don't have to know about setting up a Pro Tools system. You don't have to worry about gain structure. You don't have to worry about what fluxivity level you're going to tape before saturation. You don't have to worry about the azimuth of the heads. You don't have to know what azimuth is. All this stuff. There's a lot of stuff that you have to know inside out, and then forget about and just get to work and record. The artists don't need to know about any of this stuff. If they're stoked by seeing these reels turn, that's cool, but it's not a dog and pony show. It's actually you're partaking in a profession, and that's what I really, really, really enjoy, the craft of recording. And tape machines are a raging pain in the ass a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't own what I own if I had to pay someone to fix these things and set them up and all that. I learned how to do this stuff just simply because I lived in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about when I first lived here, I guess I should preface that I just returned to the area about a year and a half ago after living in Tennessee for about 7 years.
Yeah,
so,
you had mentioned that like you had gotten your first tape console and it was semi-functional and you had to fix it in order to keep
Right.
it functional, and that was basically just by attrition. If you wanted to use this thing, you had to fix it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the truest thing. You know, like you got something, your guitar breaks, you're like, I got to play a gig, yo. And like, what am I going to do? You know?
That makes
so
sense.
You figure it out. And the tape machine thing is a little bit harder than replacing a jack on a guitar, you know? But, but man, I mean, I can't overemphasize how many hours and hours, hundreds of hours that I spent wanting to take a hammer to this thing, you know, because I'm just like, you know, you're recording and then all of a sudden the take-up reel stops taking the tape and you're like, what the heck, you know? And it's like, I got to figure this out. What am I going to do? It's not like I have 3 of these things sitting here. I can go to the other one.
Yeah, dude, that's.
I'm cool.
I guess I never even thought about that. Like on the fly. I mean, I don't know why. I don't know why I never thought about that. Like, of course, it's going to break down at an inconvenient time. It's not going to break down at a convenient time.
Right. Even like, you know, you think of like a NASCAR driver or something. Shout out to Dakota.
Dakota from TV Cop just loves his NASCAR, and I love that guy.
But you think of a race car driver, even those guys with tons of money, maybe they do have backup cars. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like it. You know, if one of their cars takes a poo on the track, they got to fix it.
Yep.
Right? Same way with the tape machine. You know, I don't have like a spare $25,000 GH16 just sitting there.
Yeah. No kidding.
You know what I mean? I mean, as foolish as it is, I do now. Actually, I have a spare one of those, and as I showed you, I have a spare of the other machines, but man, it's been over the course of 20 years, and I would buy these things broken. And mind you, these things are like 40, 50 years old now, so you can buy them just like a used car. You can buy them for cheap.
You just kind of have to know what to do with them, though, too.
Yeah, just like a broken car, though. You buy the old Mustang, and it's looking groovy in your garage, but that only goes so far. And when you're trying to make money with these machines, with your profession, it's not a dog and pony show. It's about using the things as they're meant to be used. You know, I think a lot of people hang their hat on this grooviness of a tape machine, but the reality of owning one and making a living using these machines, it's not so glamorous, you know, because I've had nights where I got a band coming in from wherever and freaking tape machine, something goes wrong with it. You're like, what am I going to do? You're up until 3 a.m. figuring this thing out, you know, and the band's going to come in at 10 a.m. or what, you know, whatever. So many times of doing that stuff. And it's like, I'm not saying this as a woe is me sort of thing. It's just a reality of working in this certain way.
Yeah, I totally get you. The classic car reference is a perfect reference for this, I think, because
totally
like you were talking about, you can go buy an old classic car. Like I can go buy an old blown out Mustang for a couple $1,000s, you know, and but it's like old and rusty, and I've got to know A, how to fix it up, and B, how to fix the engine and everything, you know, just to get the thing to run.
Yeah,
and even if you get it running, it's not a guarantee that the thing's gonna work all the time. It could break down halfway down the road. It could overheat on the highway. You don't know.
Totally. And that's why, you know, if I were smart, I would just get a computer and a card table and call it a studio. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, the crazy thing about that is, like you said at the very beginning of the podcast, I've seen that. I've been a part of that. And it works out fantastic if the right person's behind the ones and twos.
It's all about the operator. That's the whole thing. All this stuff means nothing unless the operator knows what they're doing. It's all about the person twiddling the knobs. I've made records in so many wacky situations with a laptop in some dude's attic or recorded live shows, whatever, you know, and you just got to make it work. I will say, I think that I'm thankful that I've come from the era that I have, in that doing things the way that I have historically has taught me a lot about the ins and outs, the nuts and bolts of things, the minutia of classic recording techniques, you know, and real engineering. Like engineers, they didn't call it that flippantly, you know.
Yeah.
Classic engineers made their own consoles back in the 50s and 60s because there's no console. You couldn't go to a Guitar Center and buy a Mackie. There was no Mackie. So these dudes who were like military electronics specialists or whatever, these dudes would piece together some stuff and build a mixer. And when that thing broke, they knew how to fix it. I'm not of that ilk. I'm not quite that deep down the rabbit hole. I don't have that knowledge. I wish I did in ways, but I'm kind of the step after that or whatever, as far as like, if something goes wrong with my console, I can fix it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But again, the reason is because it's just a healthy curiosity and also shallow pockets. You know what I mean? I don't have $5,000 to spend on somebody coming and fixing my console.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is to find somebody who like specializes in this. It would probably cost a lot of money, and I bet you find yourself somehow in those shoes by being able to fix some of this. Like, have you ever had anybody get a hold of you and say, "Hey, I know that you have one of these machines. Can you fix mine because this went out on it?"
Yeah, when I moved to Nashville, I went there to do the engineering thing. And I went there just to see what I could do as a human being, quite honestly. I was working here and doing a factory job, did that for 16 years. I decided to jump ship and see what I could do. Anyway, as I went down to Nashville, I didn't want to be one of these dudes that was just like, "Hey, bro, I'm a sick engineer, hire me, man." I didn't want to be one of those guys. And so I just kind of laid low, and I happened to be friends with these two technicians. And so they started, I didn't have anything to do, so I just hung out with these guys all the time. And so I ended up tagging along and working on consoles with them and tape machines. And up to that point, I'd only worked on my own. There's a difference between knowing how to get your Mustang going and then getting some other dude's Mustang that has a whole different thing of issues than you've ever seen.
Bingo. Yeah, that's actually another really good point.
Like, I had to work on a lot of Mustangs.
It takes a whole different set of confidence to fix somebody else's stuff, or to. For
sure.
Yeah.
There is a lot on the line, dude. This was day 3 of living in Nashville, mind you. But I'm sorry, I'm battling. I got tons of like stories like this, but
hit me with them.
But I remember like day 3, man. I was in town, and again, I was just like, I don't have anything to do. I'm just hanging out. So I went on this service call with this guy named Randy Blevins. And Randy's a little nuts, but in a good way. But we went to this older dude's studio. And this guy, like, he had photos on the wall of him and Waylon Jennings, him and, all these classic country dudes. And I'm just like, man, like, part of me wishes my dad was there with me. He'd be stoked on that,
Yeah.
But he was just such a cool thing. I was like, this guy's a serious guy. And he was a cool guy. He's kind of a cantankerous, like, older guy. Like, the dude was, like, pushing 80. He had to have been. And he'd been in it for a long time. Anyway, I had this console, and it had an issue with the automation system. It had this thing called VCA automation. And I'd never touched one in my life. But the whole thing about this stuff is that you got to be kind of Fonzie about it, and you got to kind of keep your poker face happening. Uh-huh. And because it doesn't inspire confidence when the guy that's in here to help the main guy is like, "What's this do?" That doesn't really inspire confidence. Like, Yeah. So I remember this guy was so Randy had me underneath the console with a soldering iron. I mean, mind you, I knew how to solder and all that. I wasn't like a total hack, but I just didn't have a lot of experience at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I'm under this console, like soldering this thing on his patch bay. We found out after about 5 hours of working on this guy's console, trying to like figure it out. And then this is the joys of analog, mind you. After 5 hours of sitting there staring at this thing, trying to figure it out, we finally kind of figured out what it was. It was a normalization issue on the patch bay. And we had to flip it. And so the normal would be denormaled or whatever. Anyway, so I had to do that from underneath the console. And so I'm underneath there, and then I can see out underneath there, like my feet are like hanging out the bottom of the console, And I look up and I see his name was Gene Breeden, was the owner of the studio. I see Gene like just staring at me, like burning holes, like just staring at me, like, who the fuck is this dude? Who's this? Like, who's this kid? Mind you, I was 35 at the time, but he's like, who's this kid working on my console, like with the soldering iron in his hand, And it was like the ultimate. I was like, oh man, it's like I'm not in small town anymore. Like, this is for realsies,
Mm-hmm.
And it was a moment that kind of stuck with me. And anyway, to answer your question in a very roundabout way, I did get a lot of tech work kind of as a side, because I didn't have a proper studio in Nashville for the first couple years, because I was trying to find a house, and the housing scene there has gotten nutty, which is partly why I left.
Yeah, I heard as of late it's been getting pretty insane.
It's absurd, man. You could never ever hope to own anything for the rest of your life, and it's like, I'm just not really part of that program. And so that's partly why I moved back to my homeland. But anyway, I ended up getting known as this tape machine guy, and I ended up getting known as this tape machine guy that was easy to be around, almost more importantly,
Mm-hmm.
A lot of technicians tend to be older cantankerous dudes, that are just sick of it,
Yeah, I mean, anybody with any
understandable.
office job can definitely tell. Like, if you call IT, it's kind of the
Totally.
same concept.
Yeah, I mean, somewhat understandably, because you're just constantly inundated by dudes, just with dumb questions. But,
Yeah, all you do is fix problems all day.
Yeah. Anyway, so I ended up getting a lot of calls to work on tape machines. So that led me into studios I never ever thought I'd be in. That ended up giving me kind of an interesting place of trustworthiness that a lot of engineers wouldn't get. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of engineers would just get brought in because they like the person. You hope that the dude knows what he's doing, or she. And if they do, we'll call them back.
Yep.
But when you have a guy that comes in and like knows how to fix your console, your tape machine or something, that guy's clearly, and I'm saying this humbly, I'm not saying like, I'm this crazy scientist. I'm just saying, imagine if you saw a guy that came in to work on this stuff, you're like, that guy probably knows what he's doing,
Yeah.
If he's doing that, he probably knows how to set up a microphone,
Oh, yeah.
And if the dude knows how the console works from a technical standpoint, the guy can probably run it,
Mm-hmm.
And so I got a lot of engineering gigs from doing that.
All right.
And so I kind of came in from the back door, which I was not planning on, but it ended up working out great. So, and the other thing was, I think I mentioned in that little precursor thing, is that I ended up landing a job for a microphone company for a couple years right after I moved to town. So
Yeah. I mean, keeping on this recording studio kind of line that we're going here. So you had built your own recording studio before moving to Nashville. Nashville, correct?
Right.
So you had built your own recording studio at your home or wherever it was in Iowa before you moved to Nashville. You go to Nashville, you start to kind of walk around and you get to see inside a lot of different studios. Not, it's one of those things where you get a traveling gig where I'm going to go from here and fix their stuff, and then I'm going to go here and fix their stuff. And the whole time you're kind of just taking in what's going on, where everything's set up.
Yeah.
Did it change the way you looked at maybe setting up your own studio by the time you were going to set your own up again?
That's a good question. Yeah, probably. I never really thought about it, quite honestly, but I've always had an idea of like, I grew up kind of like an artsy fartsy kind of guy. I was really into drawing, and so I always kind of had visual aesthetics that I kind of adhered to, so I always kind of have been strong-headed about like how I want things to feel or look. So I don't know if those things influenced me. I don't know. But for sure, going in, all of a sudden being in like Blackbird, or all of a sudden going into RCA Studio A where Elvis recorded, you're just like, holy crap, these places are sacred.
Yeah, that's wild.
And being able to see that, and I mean, truly, like, I was there about 7 years, and I truly could say that probably a week didn't pass that something extraordinary came my way. And again, I'm saying that humbly. I'm saying that as a fan, like as somebody, like if I saw what happened, I'd just be like, man, And what I mean by that is that all the time something would come my way, and mind you, these things weren't always necessarily like pad in my pocket real fat, like, mind you,
Yeah.
It could have just been a connection. It could have been a friendship. It could have been a connection that I made that came to fruition 2 years later. That's how the Brendan Benson thing happened. Like I met him when I first moved to town, and I ended up doing some work for him about 2 years later. That stuff happens. So I guess what I mean is that it was just such a hotbed of activity, and for some reason I was put in a position that I had the skill set and I had, I guess, the personability. That's a word, right?
Yeah, we'll take it.
And that people let me in the door, let me stay. Anybody can get in the door, but it takes a certain person to stay in the door, right?
Yeah.
Anybody can get a job, but it takes a certain person to keep a job, right?
That's very true. Yeah.
So I just realized that I was extremely lucky to be able to do the things I was able to do, and I feel the same. Well, I say this having been able to do some things I never thought I would have done, but even if I'd just gone down there and just recorded Billy Bob Joe's blues band, bands like that, quote unquote no name bands, totally cool. I've recorded tons of them, still do. And I don't mean that in a
No, I get what you're saying.
There's no slide of anybody's career.
Yeah, I'm in no name bands. Don't worry about it. Three Finger
I'm
Betty.
just saying,
Three Finger Betty, baby.
There's a difference.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, if I mentioned my old band and then I mentioned the Raconteurs, somebody would probably know the Raconteurs, but they wouldn't know Rhinestone Rash, my old band, right?
Bingo. Yeah, totally makes sense. Yeah.
That's all
Great
I'm saying.
analogy.
That's all I'm saying. I just try to tread lightly on that because I know that can kind of come across as kind of,
Yeah, I know what you're saying. But and I get what you're saying about when you would go into these places, and as a fan, it's kind of like when you're growing up and your dad and you are like, he's teaching you how to play guitar. You're like, oh, I like Johnny Cash and this kind of stuff. You never once in a million years would have thought like, 20, 30 years down the line, I'm going to be in some of these studios that some of these people I've heard are going to also have been in and played in and recorded stuff in. Maybe even fixing consoles they use to record. You never know.
100%, man. I ended up meeting and building some. This is a funny thing because like I'm not an acoustician. I'm not a builder of things per se. For a living. I just I learned how to swing a hammer and put stuff together because I didn't want to spend $500 for it. But anyway, I ended up meeting Johnny Cash's bass player.
Whoa.
This guy named Dave Rowe. And he was his last bass player, mind you. It was his very last bass player before he passed.
What was his name?
And his name was Dave Rowe.
Cool.
And he's a heavy-duty session bass player around town. And anyway, somehow somebody told him to get in touch with me because he was building a new studio in his garage, and he wanted somebody to build him some acoustic treatment panels. He didn't want me to come over and record for him. He didn't want me to come and tech for him. He wanted me to build some boxes with insulation in them,
That's crazy.
And I'm like, look, I'm cool with that. I'm fine with it. I built a ton of them, I built a bunch for myself. So I'm pretty used to doing that. And so I did. And then the next thing you know, we ended up being friends. And the next thing you know, I'm friends with, Johnny Cash's bass player.
That's wild.
Just nuts. It's truly... that's what I say. It's like everything. I feel like I try to live my life and try to do stuff that if I were an outsider looking in, or if I was a kid that was wanting to do something rad, I want to do the rad thing that I would be stoked about as a bystander.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And if I get put in a position to be able to do something rad, then I want to be able to be in a position where I can partake in that. Meaning, I want to have the skill set, and I want to, or if at the very least, I want to be teachable. Because nobody knows everything. So that has been my entire existence, I think. And sorry, I feel like I'm on a couch and you're like my therapist, but it's like that's my entire kind of experience, and it continues to be. And I just feel extremely blessed to to have been able to do what I've done, and I'm curious to see what I'm going to do, next year.
Yeah,
know?
I totally get where you're coming from, because like conceptually, I didn't join a band until I knew I had the skill set to join a band, and it was something like I always wanted to do as a kid, but it was also something where it was like, I'm not going to go in and half-ass this. I'm not going to show up and make the people standing next to me look bad. I'm not going to show up and have somebody be like, it's kind of like one of those deals where like, it's one of those people that gets their foot in the door but doesn't stay in the door, like you said. It's somebody that we're like, oh, you can play guitar, join the band, and then after a while they're like, this guy doesn't really know how to play guitar, you're out. I didn't want to be that guy, and it's the same thing that you're saying. You want to go into these things with fervency and enjoy them and take the opportunities as they come, and especially the ones that are afforded to you, but also the ones that would make you feel good as if you were a bystander watching them happen, or like a 5-year-old you would just be like, that is so cool, guy.
That's 100% it. I mean, it's true. It's kind of like a little kid approach in a way, but to me, you can call it inspiration, you can call it stoke, you can call it whatever. But man, as that, I don't know how old I was, 15, 16, it was right before I started playing guitar when I saw my friend Dave's band at that studio. And to imagine, like, when I'm age 36 or whatever, I remember, I was like age 36, and I worked for a microphone company called AEA, which made like high-end ribbon microphones, and they were based in Pasadena. Anyway, that's another story on its own. But I ended up getting flown around the States to do seminars and do trade shows. I did like AES and NAMM, and
cool.
You're probably familiar with NAMM. But these various things, and it is kind of a weird thing. Like, you work for a certain company that has a certain clout, and your name's on the tag, and you get invited to Electric Lady or something, And it's like, hey, next thing I know, I'm hanging out at Electric Lady at an after party in New York. And I'm like, what the, like, I'm just some dude from Centerville,
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what the heck? But here's the funny thing, man. The funny thing about it was, when I first moved to Nashville, I was really nervous that I would get there and I'd be like, I'm a kook. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I only knew how to mic up a drum kit from just doing it myself for years. And I think the snare drum sounds good or whatever. And then I got to Nashville and I was like, shit, I hope that I'm doing this right. You know what I mean? Because I could not be. And there's not really any right or wrong, but there are certain technical benchmarks that you need to be able to do, You need to understand what's going on. It's a matter of repeatability when it comes to, there's a difference between amateur and professional as far as, well, quite honestly, professional just means you're being paid, right? But
it's like a consistency thing.
But there's a consistency. It's anybody can hit a golf ball and sometimes get it in the hole.
Yeah.
But if you have a band that came in from, once I recorded this band from Australia, from Sydney.
Oh, jeez.
And I got recommended by this a friend that I first met when I moved there, and this dude gets a hold of me, and he's like, Bex told me that you'd be a good guy to get a hold of. You do the tape thing. I'm interested in that. I'm like, sure, great. And like, we get off the phone, I'm like, oh shit, like I got to make sure this works, and because like this dude from Sydney, Australia is coming to record with me, of all people. In a town like that has crazy amounts of studios working at high level each, and so I had to be able to bring the goods, no matter if I woke up and I was like feeling boo boo, or I woke up and I wasn't feeling so good, or my cat scratched me, or whatever, stubbed my toe. I still got to get the snare drum to sound good, and I think what separates people in professions, whether it's recording or whatever you're doing, is the repeatability, the ability to deliver the goods, regardless.
Yeah.
You have a drummer that sucks. You have a drummer that has a crappy drum kit. Well, they don't know that. You still gotta record that crappy drum kit the best you can, because they're paying you to do that as a professional, and that's what you do. So.
As far as we definitely need to steer this conversation towards you coming back to Iowa and making.
Yeah, go ahead and steer it, man. I'm getting off the rails here.
No. It's totally cool because this is how I like the conversations to go because I feel like every time you leave me with something, I have more questions to ask, and that's
Cool.
that's awesome.
Great.
But before I don't know. I definitely want to steer this back towards the fact that you started your own recording studio in Iowa years ago.
Yeah.
You moved to Nashville
Yeah.
on a whim. It's one of those things where somebody's
Let
got
me interrupt.
What's
Let
that?
me interrupt.
Yeah.
Let me interrupt. It was not on a whim, mind you.
Oh yeah. So what was your plan going there?
Well, I mean, I just I'm not trying to be picky towards words, but whim is definitely not in that vocabulary of where I was at in the headspace. I started my first studio when I had recording gear before that. I bought my first recorder when I was 18 or 19. Just dinked around, had no clue what I was doing until like my mid-20s or whatever, This is pre-internet, so like I was scrounging books and stuff, so I had no idea what I was doing. I was joyfully ignorant. And I made probably more recordings than I ever had in that time, because that's what you do when you don't know the difference between good and bad, all right? Mm-hmm. You probably play more guitar when you first started than you do now, because now you just want to play good all the time, right?
Yeah, to an extent.
I mean, it's the same way with recording or whatever. Anyway, so I had my first real studio when I started building it when I was 28, finished it when I was 30. I did that for about 5 years. And mind you, I was working at a factory during this whole time. And I just did it because I was curious. I wanted to see if I could do it. And there's nothing on the line because, I had a job. But I started recording people, and I started realizing, shoot, I kind of, it seems to sound good, and like these people are stoked. And there was something that recording brought out of my personality that I was fairly withdrawn at the time, honestly. And something about recording and being around these people brought something out of my personality that has blossomed in recent years, But in that I was kind of more personable than I ever realized, All of a sudden you take the guy that thinks he's not personable and shove him out in front of a table at NAMM or at AES in New York, and you have to talk to 30,000 people, you know what I mean? All of a sudden you kind of have to like do something, or you're probably not going to get asked to do it again, And so I quickly realized there was something in my personality that I was kind of a leader in that way, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I struggle with that a lot because I traditionally, growing up as a little punk rock kid, I didn't really like the idea of being some leader, some like puffed chest guy, But there's nothing wrong with being a leader as long as you're a good leader, Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I had the original studio, and I was doing all right with it. And I recorded a few bands that ended up putting out the releases, albeit either themselves or on a small label or something. And, but the first time that happens, you're like, holy crap. You're like holding the CD, and you're like, whoa. Like, it says Strangebird recorded by Travis, like, that's nuts, And so it kind of like I inevitably, by just doing this repeatedly, rinse and repeat, I inevitably increased my level of confidence in my skills, in my craft. And I had to admit to the fact that I was actually okay at this, mm-hmm. which seems ridiculous because a lot of folks are the opposite. They don't know what they're doing, but they think they do, They're like kind of weird dichotomy. But so that happened. And so I kept like choking down this feeling of wanting to go and see what I could do in the real world, quote unquote, in the bigger pond, mm-hmm. Again, no disrespect to recording smaller bands, but I just wanted to see what I could do. You want to see what you can do. You're a great swimmer. Well, how would you do at the Olympics? You just want to see.
Yeah.
And so I decided I wanted to move somewhere. And there was two options. One was Minneapolis for some reason. And then the other was Nashville. Kind of also for some reason. I didn't really have any necessary reason for those two places, but so anyway, I choked that thought down a couple times. This was like probably in my early 30s. And by the time I was about 34, I was just like, you know how it goes. Like you get to a certain point and you're just like, man, I've got to see what I can do. Otherwise, I'm going to be this dude working at this factory, and I'm going to be 55 years old, and I'd be like, yeah, once I retire, then I'll have some fun with this recording thing I love. It's like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
How often do you see that happen? Not very often. And life is for living,
Yeah,
and,
I don't know too many people on their deathbed that were like, hey, I wish I would have worked a whole bunch more.
Right, right. And, these are all cliche things. The thing is that you can easily, like you said, on a whim, and that's why I kind of have such a problem with that term, because if you do things on a whim, you generally don't have things planned out, and you don't really have a real strong, I can't use my words. You don't have a real strong identity with what you're trying to do. Like, you haven't really thought it through.
That
pros and the cons.
That brings me really close to one of my favorite sayings ever, which is, a goal without a plan is a dream.
It's a great saying. Yeah.
So,
great.
Yeah, I dig that you corrected me on that, because it seems like you really actually did have a plan here to go out and test your skill set against the skill set of others.
Yeah, again, it comes back to curiosity, truly. And so I spent a year, I was 34 at the time, I spent a year of my life getting my ducks in a row, and financially and otherwise, and kind of kept it on the down low, Mm-hmm. And then I just put in my 2 weeks, and my hands are trembling, you know what I mean? Because I'd worked there for 16 years. I was 35, and I worked there since I was 19.
Yeah.
Crazy. And no matter how punk rock you are, no matter how much you're screw it, it's just a job, blah, blah, blah. When you work there for a long time and you're getting a good paycheck and you have health care, whatever, and that's security.
Yeah, you're leaving security.
Man, I jumped. The way I think of it is I jumped off the cliff of security, with no parachute. I just freaking jumped and hoped that there was a body of water at the bottom. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I went through a kind of similar thing. I worked at a job for 12 years, and then I went back to school. It's not too much the same, but it's not too much different. It's kind of one of those deals where it's I knew I was smart. I did good in school before. I'm going to go out and apply this and see how I can fare with everybody else that's out there trying to up their game in the learning tree or whatever the heck, So It was the same deal. I left a job, and I didn't have a job for a couple years because I was going to school. And then I, finally got another job, and when I had the skill set to apply to the job that I needed to apply it to, and that comes right back to you got to have the skill set, and you got to show up with it, to do the things you want to do.
Yeah. So I guess continue on though that I had the studio from age 30 to 35-ish, right around there. And so in around age 34, I decided to kind of make this private move to get myself in the position that I could do this, because I didn't want to go there and 6 months down the road be broke and just be well, I guess I got to go back home and work at Kerwood again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Really didn't want to do that. If I came back, it's on my own terms, which is how I came back, Mm-hmm. And that was kind of another jumping off of the thing of security, because on the other end, I was doing well there. I had a studio, I was working, and then I decided to leave that and come back home, which is almost polar opposite of what I did when I was 35, So that was kind of a different story almost, but
yeah, it's almost like you had your skill set established and your clientele established and a name for yourself there, and you had your security there, and you just kind of turned around and left that behind and went to a place where you had to reestablish everything once again.
Yeah, it's been a heck of a year and a half.
So you've been back in Iowa for a year and a half.
Yeah, I moved back the middle of May in 2018, so I guess that's about a year and a half.
And you fired Songbird Studio back up again. Strangebird, excuse me. You fired up your Strangebird Studio. I did it. I'm sorry.
All right.
Strangebird. So you got your studio back up. www.strangebirdrecording.com. Threw it out there.
Yeah.
Sorry. But yeah, so you start your studio back up in Iowa with the knowledge that you knew what you were doing and you were going to help others apply it. Do you feel like it's got to be different here in Iowa than it was in Nashville, as far as maybe less demand for a tape I don't know. I have very low exposure to a recording studio, so I have no clue what kind of a demand someone like you would have versus somebody with a laptop. I don't know.
Right. I don't either. figuring that one out.
Let me ask you this: you said you were kind of busy recording bands back in Iowa? I mean, I know of a couple of bands that at least have contacted you and recorded stuff with you. So
yeah, I want to be transparent. You know, at the risk of I don't know, no risk really, but I want to be transparent in that. I'm in the process of building the next Strangebird. I have a control room area. I have an ability to mix and do overdubs. I'm building my live room right now, which is attached to my house. This house that I'm in is on my property. I bought this piece of property from my father about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I'll say this quickly so I don't get emotional, but a month after I came back home, unbeknownst to me and unbeknownst to my father had stage 4 cancer, lung cancer. And so a month after that, 2 months after I came back, he was gone. He passed away. And part of the reason I came home was to be with my father and my mom. My parents are split, and my mom lives around Cedar Rapids. And part of the reason I came back was to be with them. You know, spend time. As you get older, you start to realize mortality, right? Kicks in.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, I'm so thankful that I was around for my father. Yeah, I wish he was around to hang with tonight, but you know, that's life.
Yeah. At least you got back to spend some time with him, though.
Yeah. The reason I bring that up is not a woe is me story. These things happen to, people lose their parents. It's part of the cycle of life. But the reason I bring that up is that I came home with the idea. My father started building a building on my property. This is how cool my dad is. Okay. He started building a building on my property. It was just going to be like a garage or just a man cave, whatever he called it,
Mm-hmm.
And next thing I know, he's like building a house. And ultimately, he was building a house for me to come and live in whenever I wanted to.
Oh, that's crazy.
So,
was he building it like all himself? Like, is he one of those kind of handyman type people?
He is one of those handymen. My dad had glaucoma pretty badly at the end years of his life, and so he didn't really like trust himself on the roof or something, because he'd misstep and fall off the roof or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to delegate some stuff. But my dad is very much a do-it-yourself. I'm spitting image of my dad as far as like knowing how. Just getting in there and learning how to do shit,
That probably attributes to exactly what you were talking about with the curiosity and just going in and fixing your own consoles. It all translates into that.
My dad was I have no problems talking about my dad because I love him so, and it brings me joy to honor him in whatever way I can. But my dad was a machinist. He built and repaired engines, which is why I know a little bit about cars. That's why I bring up like the Mustang thing and all that.
Cool.
I've got my dad's old block from his. He had a 289 Mustang Shelby.
Nice.
Which I wish he still had, because But anyway, so I grew up watching my dad fix stuff. I grew up watching my dad wire the house, plumb the house, build walls. So when it came to me building a studio, my first studio, I just did it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I got to figure this out. And now I'm building the next studio. So he built this house, and it's got an attached garage. And so the garage has never had a car in it. It's like brand new. And so I was like, it doesn't have to be a garage. So that's going to be my live room.
Oh, cool.
Okay. So it's in the process right now. I got all the walls up. I got drywall on. I got to finish the ceiling, and I got to finish some ISO boosts, and then do the finishing work. And then I'll be able to hit record again finally.
That's crazy.
So I just want to be transparent in that, it'd be easy for me to just say, yeah, I'm ready to go. Come on, boys,
Yeah.
But the reality is that I'm halfway set up. I'm functional, but I've just, with my father's passing, it really set my world on its side. And so I decided that I had some money set aside, so I was fine. Excuse me. And living here, thankfully, it doesn't cost anything to live here.
Mm-hmm.
And I own the place, and so it's like I don't have to pay rent or anything. So I'm in a very privileged position in that way. And so I was like, man, I'm just gonna I'm not concerned with how it looks to people. Like if it looks like I came home and like, oh, he can't do anything, blah, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like I've got to deal with what I've got to deal with on a personal level. And so I've just kind of essentially taken the year off, essentially. I've done a little recording gigs, some remote stuff, and I've gone down to Nashville a handful of times and done some tech work, actually.
Cool. So you still actually go back to have the ability to go back to Nashville and do some of the tech work with some of the contacts that you had built there previously.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's I guess I failed to mention that, but yeah, I've gone there a handful of times probably.
That's probably never going to go away, is it?
Hope not. Well, that's my whole thing, man, is that part of the reason, like, coming home was a scary proposition because it was like, I'm jumping out of this place of, a success, and coming back to the unknown, like a much smaller, much different market, much different dynamic, much different cash flow dynamic, if you will.
Yeah. Literally everything's different.
Yeah, people aren't used to spending as much money on things here, because it costs less to live, and so all this stuff, different thing, and so I was like, man, how do I find it? How do I find my place in this? And I'm still trying to figure it out, and I'll figure it out once I'm up and rolling, once I have the sign on the door, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I just had to take some time off, and I have this house that's like halfway, it's more than 70% built, and so it's like I'm just kind of trying to honor my dad's legacy and finish what he started by finishing this house. And for the time being, it's going to be the studio. And if I decide that I'm going to stick around, which I think I will, but if I decide I'm going to stick around, then I'll probably build another studio on my property, which was the original idea.
Cool.
Before my dad got ill. So anyway, long story short, that's the idea.
Yeah.
So Strangebird is probably going to be fully functioning probably around the first of the year is what I'm guessing.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, winter will afford you. It's so weird, like Iowa winter. It's not like it's that much better off in Nashville, but like the Iowa winter, it affords you the opportunity
There's no snow down there.
Do things,
Yeah, to me, the winters here. I mean, last winter was pretty brutal. That was kind of a shock to the system. But hopefully this winter will be a little mellower. But yeah, you just become a little hibernating bear, when winter sets in here. And, it's like I have a wood stove and I just built a little lean-to. I built a lean-to just a couple weeks ago to house wood, and I'm good to go. I'm all right. I got some food. I'm good to go,
Yep.
Be a little hibernating bear and just finish up my studio, get to know what I'm doing. And Lord willing, I'll get some clients that want to do things and go from there, man.
Well, speaking of clients that might want to do things, let's plug some social media. I do know for a fact that you have Facebook for Strangebird Recordings.
Yeah, that's almost kind of like a little I should probably either take that down or upgrade it or update it because it's been dormant for probably 3 or 4 years.
Well,
Instagram is actually more.
You got the Instagram.
Relevant.
Is the Instagram?
Yeah.
What's the Instagram?
It's just Strangebird Recording, all one word.
At Strangebird Recording.
Yeah,
that's recording with a G, no S at the end.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So if
there's only one studio, there's not 2 of them.
What was that?
There's only one studio, there's not 2 of them.
Yes, true, very true. So if not Facebook, go to the Instagram. I'll leave links to both of those down below. The most
or the website.
The most official place to find you would probably be your website.
Yeah, you do the website or Instagram, quite honestly.
Oh, okay. So you will.
I'm not super active.
What's that?
I'm sorry.
I
was going to say I haven't been super active on Instagram as far as posting stuff, but I lurk there every day. So if you send me a message, I'll see it and get back.
Cool.
To you.
At least you'll do that. I mean, I'm on Instagram maybe like 2 or 3 times a week tops with my Audible Farm stuff, and I fail to look at the message things so many times. It's so bad.
Yeah. Man, Instagram's been a great way to get in touch with folks and kind of expand your circle. And it's kind of a good way to kind of keep in touch with what my friends back in Nashville are doing, because that was it kind of became my second home, really. So it's like I was fortunate to have a lot of great relationships with people there that are still going strong, just because I don't live there. And that was the thing that coming back here was the thing of like the blow softening aspect of it, of living in a small town and wondering if you're going to be able to make it. That blow was softened by the fact that I'm not stuck here. I can hop in my van and go down to Nashville. I can go wherever and record someone, and or just do some tech work or do some seminars. I've done a lot of recording seminars, things like that, which I'd like to start doing again, actually. So,
do you do any recording seminars locally, like around the Iowa area?
I haven't yet, and that's what I'd like to do. Yeah, for sure.
Dude, that would be awesome. Even if you showed, like, even if you just showed people how all the stuff worked, like, it's just like, well, all you're doing here is just basically recording with this, and this does the doohickey, and then it goes to these tapes, and this, like, even if you just did like a breakdown like that, I feel like it would help benefit people just to get a basic concept at least of what's going on.
Yeah, I really enjoy that stuff. I never ever thought I was teacher minded,
Mm-hmm.
But there's a recording studio in Nashville called Blackbird, which is owned by, she's kind of like a 90s 2000s country singer named Martina McBride.
Yeah, I've heard the name. I'm sure everybody knows.
Okay, well, yeah, she's pretty well known, but
yeah.
her and her husband John have a studio, this crazy multi-million-dollar studio called Blackbird, and it was like maybe a mile away from my house, and down there, and anyway, got to know those dudes, and they ended up. John started a recording school called the Blackbird Academy. Probably, I guess, it's been about a handful of years ago now. Anyway, I ended up knowing one of the professors that worked there, and this guy named Mark Rubel. And again, it was one of those wacky things. All of a sudden, I get this call from Mark, and he's like, "Hey, Travis, I was wondering if you'd like to come in and talk as a guest speaker to the students." And I'm just like, it's like, why me, And so anyway, so I ended up doing that, and I talked to probably a handful of. Each time he'd have a new class in, I'd talk to him. And that was a lot of fun. And I realized that putting myself in that position, kind of the same thing as like doing trade shows for AEA, for the mic company. When you do like trade shows, you notice the difference between the traffic that booths get when they have a booth and they have a table in front of them, and then you got this guy standing behind it, versus the ones where they have the table behind them and they're standing in front, engaging people.
Yeah.
You realize there's a big difference there.
Yeah.
And I was forced into standing in front of the table. And so I realized again, it's kind of something came out in my personality while doing that. And the same thing with teaching. And I realized that, you don't realize how much you know until you're put on the spot to teach it or to explain it.
Yeah.
And I realized that I had there was something in me that I really enjoyed it, and I kind of knew what I was talking about, and I really enjoyed sharing it with people, and I do. So yeah, I think it'd be cool to do some seminars. Be a good way to have a little side income and spread the radness. It'd be cool.
Yeah, if you ever have any sort of a seminar, I would be willing to go just to check it out, just for the simple fact that I'm kind of like you. I'm a curious guy, and even if I don't want to like dabble in it, I still kind of want to understand at least what the heck's going on.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to be a professional at everything. I'm not a professional at making eggs, but I know how to make them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, a bad analogy, but you don't. It's okay to be curious about something and just want to see how it works. Just to better your life. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what you did to start out with, and it was something that you really liked, and you just kept going with it. And
yeah, next thing I know, I'm 43, and it's my career. It's like, go figure.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, oh man, could you have ever imagined in a million years while you were working at the factory that you could actually say, "This is my career"?
No. Here's the thing, man, is that I really appreciate you making the effort and taking the time to talk to me, and I suppose we could have made this into a little walking advertisement for Strangebird and what I do and all that. If I get some business from this is awesome. If somebody wants to reach out to me, I'd love to talk to anyone. Okay, whether you're going to spend money with me or whether I recommend you to someone else, that would be better fit. But my point is that I've realized, and maybe it's a residual emo stance from, all that's happened in the last year, with my father and everything in life. But I really, doing all this stuff is rad, and it's rad to have a studio. And, if I were to see all this stuff from an outsider's perspective, I'd be stoked and awe and confusion all at the same time and all that. But the thing is, the reason I do this stuff is not, I do it for a living, so I got to make like grown up money, right? But aside from that, I do it simply to connect with people and to share some radness, if you will. I know that sounds like a little kid thing, but hey, whatever. I'm a skateboarder. It's like, what can you say? You got limited vocabulary, right?
Dude, I totally get that.
But the whole thing, man, if I can continue on this for a bit, on this whole diatribe, but I would like, if anybody takes anything away from our chat tonight, I really want people to understand that the reason that, maybe not a good way to put it, it's not that people need to understand why I'm doing something. It's not like I'm self-important in that way, but the whole reason that I'm doing what I'm doing, and I think the reason that I've been successful, and I've noticed that other people that do things for the same reasons or similar reasons are successful also, is because if you do something with the heart of service, and I realize that kind of maybe sounds biblical even, but with the heart of service and the mindset of sharing and connecting with your fellow human being, which also sounds really hippie / biblical. I don't know, but it's the truth when it all comes down to it, and our chests aren't puffed out, and we're not trying to be cool guys or girls. The reality is that we need to connect with folks, and no matter how grounded you are and whatever, you have your moments of darkness, you have your moments of fear and loneliness, and I know what that's like, and I know a lot of folks know what that's like. It's a human condition. But if I'm put in a position that I can do what I'm doing, something that I love, that's super fun to do, I mean, shit, like I get to record people, it's like, I feel like I'm lying because I guess I'm working,
Yeah.
Like I recorded the Uncle Girls. You had the Uncle on. What was it, last week?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Okay, that's right. And I recorded those girls and just kind of and again I recorded them because I just wanted to share some radness with them. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And they're sweethearts, they're young girls, sweethearts. And I saw them play a few times and I'm like, man, this is exactly why I do this. And I did it pro bono. I did it for free because one, they're broke ass kids, but also, I didn't want that to be an issue. And also my studio's not done. I don't really feel right charging somebody when my studio's not even done. They recorded in a bare room, with drywall, stack of drywall next to them, and, but anyway, I mean, that was kind of a good example. I just wanted to share the radness. I just wanted them to walk away just being like, I don't know exactly what's going on, but this is rad. And the thing is that thing may have set them on their way of doing their own rad things, because they're like, man, remember that one dude, Travis? Like, he was like, dude was like 40 or something.
Yeah.
Like when you're that age, I'm like an old ass guy, and so like, it's like, you're like an old ass guy, to somebody that's like 17 or what. I don't know how old you are, but I'm assuming like 30 something.
Yeah, you nailed it.
But anyway, it's just, imagine that though, like these people come in and you're able to share something with them and do something for them, and they walk out being empowered, just like, man, I just had an experience that I've never had before, and something that I have always been curious about, and it was a good one, good experience, hopefully. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, they have a little product too. They have their CD.
Yep.
Dude,
I totally love that. Like
that's kind of.
I know what you're saying. It's almost like you want. I don't want to get like weird about it. Like it's almost like the serotonin that you receive from doing something that would maybe lift somebody's spirits, or maybe make them pass on this awesome feeling that they got from you to somebody else in whatever way they can.
Yeah, it can be a very hippie kind of thing, but But it's true, like when you really come down to it and you really are true with yourself, and get past the tough guy act, it really is about connecting with folks. And the fact that I'm able to do something so fun and such it's not all just like kicking back, got my foot on the console, twiddling some knobs, turning the volume knob up. It's like, what's up, bros? It's not a matter. There's a bit more to it than that. When anybody's good at something, they make it look easy, right?
Yep.
And I'm not saying that I'm good at it. I'm just saying that when that happens, it looks like they're not necessarily doing much,
Yes.
And it goes with anything, but there's more to it. There's a lot of like arduous stuff, and like if the tape machine breaks down the night before, it's not so fun. But all that stuff aside, that's part of the deal. All that stuff aside, when you're able to just share that moment and just share the radness, I can't think of a better way. I mean, it's kind of a juvenile way to put it, but it's also kind of like the perfect way to put it. You're like sharing the radness,
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
And that's, as a kid and as a grown adult that has gone through some stuff like everyone has, I still feel that innate desire to share the radness, and that's not gone away. And so that leads me to believe that I'm doing probably what I should be doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here, man. That's why I'm here.
That totally makes sense. I like to try and draw parallels between what people are doing and see if I can relate it to my life in any way at all. But I, ironically enough, had somebody today ask me why I'm doing a podcast, that I'm not generating, like, they're like, why don't you charge people money for this? Why don't you, why wouldn't you want to make money off this and do this for a living, etc.? And I started out doing it just as a way to talk to people. Honestly, I'm easy to talk to, but don't seek out people at shows. And it's like you said, when you're at a show, everyone's got their chest puffed out. And it's not like everyone's macho. I'm at a show.
No, but I'm making a blanket statement by saying that, and that's kind of a douchey thing to say. But we all know it's kind of true that we all are guarded in some way.
Yeah,
we're all putting on something.
Yeah,
so that's what I mean by that.
I totally get you. Everybody puts on airs to some extent, whether or not you're going to a show, whether or not you're going to the bar, whether or not you're hanging out at work. Everybody puts on an air, no matter where they're at. It's just the way it works. But there is that weird form of exactly what we're doing. We have a conversation with somebody on a deeper level than just like, hey, how you doing? Good. See ya. It's good to see you. You rocked tonight. Other than that, the normal things everybody says to each other. When you break it down to a deeper level, it's that weird sort of connection you want to have with somebody, where you spend time with them and interact with them.
Yeah, we all want that, but it does take a certain amount of humility and reaching inside you to understand how that works and how you can achieve that with your fellow human beings and people that are in your life. And this is, I feel there are some folks that do things like this that if you saw them out on the street, they're super awkward, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I thankfully, I don't feel that I'm that way. I feel like I'm a fairly mellow guy, I think skateboarding for that really, but it teaches you a lot of humility when you throw yourself down a set of stairs for 3 hours, trying to learn a trick. But so I brought that to like every aspect of life, but still, my main thing as far as like being able to bring folks in and share that radness with them, is my studio. And that's kind of the way that I've chosen to do it. And how rad is it that I can do that and also make money doing that? I get paid to share the radness,
Dude, that's killer.
Pretty cool, Pretty cool. That's the way I look at it. I truly think it's a matter of how you look at these things. There's a lot of downsides. You deal with a lot of folks that are not the coolest human beings.
Yeah.
But hey, I dealt with a lot of uncool people at working at the factory too,
Good.
So it is
great
what it is.
point, man.
It's life,
Dude.
It's a what is there like a saying like life is.
Don't make me say like a box of chocolates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Life is like 10% what you make of it, or 10% what you make it, 90% how you take it.
Yeah, dude.
It's like some old guy saying.
I love
that. Kind of true.
That's awesome. It's totally a good old boy saying.
Yeah, but it is true. Like how you take things. Like somebody comes up to you and calls you a douchebag. You could take it badly and punch him out, knock him out, or you could just kind of realize that this person's a turd and just turn the other shoulder and walk away. It's how you take it, and how you make that ruin your day or not.
You can either let it ruin your day or let it not ruin your day, and it's easier to not let it ruin your day. And the other thing of that is, like, when you're trying to, like you say, share the radness and just spread it around. It's one of those things, like, you got no reason to be mad at this person because you're just like, dude, it's all good. Like, we're here to do something. It's great. I love your take on that. Like, as far as just spreading the love around, man. There's not enough of that going on. That's kind of what I'm doing here. It's not. I feel like everybody has something going on, and I feel like we've definitely drilled in on that with you.
Everything's a communication platform, or has the option of being a communication platform. And Lord knows that we're in a day and age. Obviously, you're doing a podcast. I'm talking to you on my phone, right? Mm-hmm. It's crazy. And I mean my cell phone. But yeah, there's all kinds of opportunities to do that, and it's like what you make of it, what you do with it. The thing is, like, say if you were to take the guy that called you a douche, and you took that internally and got bummed or punched him, knocked him out, and then felt bad about it, whatever. Mm-hmm. You took the bully route, whatever. If you did that, and then that would, if you want to get deep into it, that basically halts some energy within you, right? It stops your energy. It stops your energy flow, right? And that's what anger does. It stops you from being able to exert energy in other ways. You're just super pissed and you want to kick a wet puppy,
Yeah, I totally get you.
And so, but if you don't do that, if you know the deeper cause of it, you realize maybe this dude just lost his parent. Maybe this person just whatever. Maybe this person's just an idiot, Maybe whatever. This person hasn't put the time in to learn about themselves enough to be able to deal with their feelings, right?
Yeah.
This person may be 16 years old. This person may be 60 years old. It runs the gamut. But what I'm saying, I guess, is that if you decide to take the path, dare I say, the higher path, the upper road, and not let this get to you, then you're allowed to still be able to reach out to the next person you meet at the grocery store. But if you're turbo pissed and you punch that dude or whatever, you just let anger get to you, then you're going to be cut off. And then when you go to the grocery store, you just be like, you're all grumbling, and you're not gonna be in a place of being able to share anything else with people. So I think you're creating a disservice to yourself.
I don't think you could have said it any better than that. Because I mean, if your day is ruined and you go to the grocery store, you're just like head down, get my frozen pizza and just get the heck out of here and just give me my meat, dude. I'm out of here. It's just, you don't want to talk to anybody. You see somebody and you're just like, hey, and you just keep going. You don't even get to be friendly with this person. It just takes you over.
Right. The thing is that it's a disservice to yourself, and it's a disservice to what you're put on planet Earth to do, and that obviously gets into a deeper discussion. That's a whole different thing. But even on a lighter tip, if imagine this though, I think that a lot of the experiences that I've garnished throughout the years, and especially the last several years, have come from being in a place that I allowed myself my energy, if you will. I don't think I've ever talked about it in this way. It sounds very hippie. Yeah. But let my energy flow, if you will, and let my personality come out. In other words, let your shoulders be free. Let your energy come. Let your personality show. Doesn't mean you have to be all ham-handed about things. You don't have to be contrived or some people try a little too hard. And that's a little of its own fakeness, and that's not a good vibe either. But if you're just cool and mellow about things and just like let it happen, the thing is that say if you're pissed and you punched the guy out and you felt bummed and you went to Hy-Vee to get some eggs and then you're all grumpy, head down, there's some dude behind you that notices you're wearing a cool jacket or something, just say whatever, and they want to say something to you, but you're all grumpy and you have this bad posture about you. They're not going to say anything because they're like, this guy is kind of grumpy bear, I'm not into that. But if you've let that shit go and you're feeling good and you're just kind of like your personality's there, that guy may say something to you. And then the next thing you know, you may make a connection. All of a sudden, oh, that dude plays guitar. Hey, he's looking to record. He likes your jacket. Like that means anything, but it's, whatever it is, he likes your shoelaces, whatever. And, but if you were to to knock that opportunity away by letting stuff get to you. Not that things aren't going to get to you as a human. I'm not saying that you have to be cold as ice all the time, but learning what you're about and learning how to deal with that stuff is a real important thing, I think, and it leads to a lot of opportunity. And not having that skill in your bag shuts off a lot of opportunities. And I think that's kind of the crux of success versus halted success. Success is somewhat of a what is success? You're successful, I'm successful, the person getting my groceries is successful. There's a lot of ways to view success, but I'm just saying, as far success is just simply being able to do the things you want to do and share the radness, ultimately. So that's why I felt like I've been successful since I made the go of it when I was 35 years old, and so that, I don't know, man, I'm just babbling. Sorry,
dude. No, I totally. You know what? This point we're kind of drilling home here. It might be the perfect way to end the podcast, because everyone out there should definitely just share the radness, man. You've said so many things.
That's
that
the title
I'm
of the
going to
podcast
think
right
about.
there.
You've said so many things I'm going to think about after we're done recording, and I don't want to be like, oh, it was so great, but you said so many things I'm probably going to think about tomorrow too.
Cool.
As
Great.
far as how to handle myself, because I see myself falling into some of these pitfalls you describe, as I'm sure everybody does in their life.
Yeah. Myself included. I'm not, I'm hesitant to say things like this because it makes it somewhat seem like I'm yeah, I know what's going on, I'm infallible. No. Just because you can give advice doesn't mean you follow it all the time,
Exactly. You have the ability to recognize it is one of the things.
That's a big start.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude.
Acknowledgement.
Thank you a million times over for sitting down, taking time out of your day to sit down with me, making this work. It took a while for us to finally get together, but I'm glad we finally had a conversation, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, maybe down the road, if you want to do a part 2, I'd be more than happy to.
Heck yeah, because we barely scraped the surface on talking about all this stuff.
That's true. Yeah. We should talk about recording bands live to a 2-inch 8-track at Third Man. That'd be some fun combo.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that'd be some crazy stuff, because recording a band live has enough tricks that you need to pull out of your bag. Anyways.
Doing it in front of an audience, live studio audience, so to speak. That was pretty fun.
That's wild. So everybody, check out Strangebird. They're on Facebook, Instagram. Check them out on Instagram. Go to their website, strangebirdrecording.com. Hit up Travis, say hi to him, see what he's got going on. Very knowledgeable. Dude, thank you so much. Once again, I said, I'm going to take a lot of the stuff that we talked about today and think about it for days to come, at least.
Right on.
All right.
Well, thank you, Peter.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. That one is in the bank. I told you that one was going to be good. You know what? I had such a great time sitting down talking with Travis, and I meant every word that I said. Where there's some of the things that he said in the podcast that I'm going to be taking with me on my travels today, tomorrow, for a while. I'm going to be thinking about that stuff for a while. So thank you, Travis, very much for coming in, dropping a little bit of knowledge, telling us a little bit about your story and why you're doing exactly what you're doing. That whole share the radness thing I love it. I think I'm going to steal it. And use it in my day-to-day, because why not? Everybody should be sharing the radness one way or the other. So that's that. I don't know, man. It was when I recorded this episode, I was sitting down and I just thought afterwards for a while, man, this is such a good, deep conversation. And I hope this platform is the perfect platform for it, because I would very much welcome having another conversation like this with anybody about what they're doing, not just explaining what they're doing, but going deeper into it and saying why they're doing what they're doing and what drives them to do it, what influences they've had, and just candidly speaking about their experiences. You know what? Travis knocked this one out of the park, and I can't wait to have him back again. Maybe maybe and hopefully I can actually get down to his recording studio sometime and sit down with him face to face. That'd be a big dream of mine, to just be able to go down and sit down and talk to him face to face. He's such a cool guy. So with all of that being said, I actually do have a question for everybody listening. So I've done Skype interviews where I've kept the Skype audio, and it's pretty compressed, and you can kind of tell it sounds like the guest is talking a little bit through a can. And this one, I've done what I've done in the past with a few other ones, like the Jonathan Rowell and the Eli Dykstra one, where I took the guests at their word and let them record their own audio and send it over, and I sync that up instead of using the compressed Skype audio. So what I would like to know is what's better? What do you prefer? The issue sometimes with recording with Skype is you end up with that little bit of lag that kind of cuts off what people are talking about, so you have to repeat things sometimes. But there's sometimes when I would have the guests send me their audio clippings, you can kind of hear me in the background talking. I can edit that out, but I don't really have, and I don't want to sound unprofessional, but I don't really have the time to do that with what I've got going on in my life right now and how busy I am. I'm barely squeaking some of these episodes in under the wire and getting them edited and uploaded. But I just want to know what everybody's opinion is, regardless of the tiny little bit of talkback that you can hear me in Travis's audio. This episode is going to be one that I will re-listen to personally, which is not something I do too much of when I listen to my own podcast. So, Travis, thank you very much. You knocked this one out of the park. I cannot wait to sit down and talk with you again. And best of luck in getting that Strangebird Recording Studio set up here within the next, maybe by the end of the year, maybe within the next 6 months. He was hoping 2020, beginning of the year 2020 sometime. So if you have any interest at all, make sure you look down below, find the links for Travis, hit him up. Instagram and his website are going to be the two big ones. His Facebook is pretty dormant, so I'm not dropping a link for that one. But I will drop the Instagram, and I will drop the website that he has. Hit him up. He's a great guy. I had a great time talking to him. I guarantee you will too. If nothing else, just pick his brain about what he's got going on, because he's doing analog. I guess on his website it's called Analog Plus, so it's mostly analog. I'm sure there's a little bit of digital thrown in here and there. 'Cause I mean, you can't just, if it was all analog, he'd be handing people tapes and being like, "Here you go," and that's not quite what he's doing. He's recording everything, and he's doing a lot. He's done a lot for a lot of bands in the area. He's like we talked about, he's sharing the radness, man, and that's cool. That's really cool. That's what I hope everybody does each and every day in their life, and just goes out and just shares the radness with somebody else around them, and just keep it cool, everybody. It's really awesome. Thank you, Travis Atkinson from Strangebird Recording. I really appreciate you sitting down, taking some time with me. I also want to say thanks to Couchtown Coffee. Couchtown Coffee, located in Ankeny. Go to www.couchtowncoffee.com or go to facebook.com/couchtowncoffee. Make sure you give them a like, give them a review, give them, rate, subscribe, do all the goodies. Everybody knows what to do. It's 2019. This is how we operate nowadays. Get online, show them some love. Couchtown Coffee, www.couchtowncoffee.com. Use the code word this week, Strangebird. It's only good for a week, the 21st through the 27th. Save yourself 20%. Just amazing coffee. I'm drinking some right now. I said it in the intro, and I'm saying it in the outro because I'm still drinking it. So I really appreciate Andrew doing the sponsorship for the podcast. Thank you, Andrew at Couchtown Coffee. I really appreciate everything you do. I want to say thanks to all of our listeners, thanks to all the listeners that just every week you're tuning in week after week. I never would have thought a year ago that this would be as popular as it is, but I really appreciate it. Without you guys listening, I really wouldn't have much of a reason to be doing this, other than the fact that this is kind of my excuse to sit down and talk to people and get to know them, and I don't really get the opportunity to do that at shows as much as I would like to. But we actually discussed that a little bit in the podcast. So I really appreciate everybody listening. I appreciate all the guests for making time with me and working with my odd schedule and my just everything. This isn't as easy to put out as I originally thought it was going to be. It's not easy to always get in contact with people. Musicians are notorious for, even though they rely on time to do their hobby, they're not always on time, and I am no different. I do what I say I'm going to do, but man, sometimes finding time to do stuff, it's one of those things where you're like, I got a podcast coming out on Thursday, and I'm busy all day Wednesday. So how about Tuesday between these 2 hours? Can you be? And it's so weird to ask someone that. And most of the time, the guests are really, really willing to find time to meet up with me, and I really, really appreciate it. If I have passed you by as a guest because our schedules couldn't meet up, please don't be discouraged by that. I'm just wicked busy right now, and I know people that are busy don't actually just go out and say they're busy, but the proof's in the pudding there, people. I've got a lot going on right now, and I really appreciate everybody being patient with me. I haven't missed a week yet, and I don't intend to. So you want to be on the podcast, go to www.audiblefarm.com, scroll all the way to the bottom, contact us, send us a little email about what's going on. I'm looking for anybody that's doing anything remotely entertaining in Iowa. I don't care if you're doing music. I don't care if you're juggling on a street corner. I don't care. I want to hear about it. Drop me a line. Let me know what you got going on. Maybe we can sit down and talk over Skype. Maybe we can get together sometime. I do spend a little bit of time here and there in different towns in the state, depending on bands and things that are going on. So just hit me up. You never know where I'll be. You never know whether or not I'll have time to do it. Don't get discouraged if my schedule is busy and we can't meet up. So I really appreciate everybody for working with my schedule and listening to this awesome podcast. You just go to the website, check out everything we got there. There's links to every single thing, YouTube's, Facebook's, Instagrams, Twitters. The Twitter is actually suspended right now. I've had a lot of issues lately while I post things online to try to promote the podcasts. It's kind of crazy. The more attention you get, the more people kind of backlash against it. I don't know what the deal with that is, but the Audible Farm Facebook page for a day was marked as spam, and I couldn't post or do anything with it due to people reporting the posts. And it's just a thing that happens sometimes, I guess. That's the internet. That's 2019. That's the way it goes. 20 years ago, nobody even had Facebook, so that wasn't even a problem. And now Facebook's a thing, and social media is a thing, and I don't know. People, it's just the way things go. So I'm not going to take it to heart even a little bit. But I want to say I did reach out a little bit about the Facebook spam issue, and got a lot of positive feedback from a lot of people, and I really appreciate it. That was a couple weeks ago. So thank you, everybody. If you follow us on Twitter and you notice that we're not interacting or anything like that, that's because I have no ability to interact. So instead, just go to a different social media site and interact with us there. I know it sounds kind of hokey to say that, but we are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. You can find links to everything that we are on at www.audiblefarm.com. We're selling t-shirts. We did the t-shirt giveaway. Trey Jackson won a t-shirt on Halloween last year. I've debated doing another t-shirt giveaway, but I got to find the time to re-up on t-shirts. So right now, I've got a limited supply of medium through extra large. That's right, the smalls are sold out. And you can hit me up, get a hold of any Audible Farm social media, send me an email, audiblefarm@gmail.com. Let us know if you would like a t-shirt. There's links and posts and talks all about it on our social media. So just head on over to the social media, check it out. Really appreciate everybody listening. I want to say thanks once again to our awesome guest this week, Travis Atkinson. Dude, it was amazing. It was a great episode. I can't wait to sit down with him again and pick his brain some more. Thanks everybody for listening. I got to take off. I got a bunch of stuff I got to do today. So really appreciate it. You guys have an awesome week. Let us know what you're doing this weekend. If there's any awesome shows coming up. I caught a couple killer shows last week. Riddled with Class and Cross-Eyed Mary were playing somewhere near my area, and they're both cover bands in the northern Iowa area. Boo. And they killed it. It was amazing. I had a good time. It's not very often you can catch two shows in one evening, but they started a couple hours apart, so I was able to catch about half of one set and then drive a ways and then catch the second half of another set. So it was really cool. I really appreciate all the bands playing on the weekends, everybody posting in the Facebook group. I just appreciate everything. So thank you guys very much for listening. Thanks again to Travis Atkinson. Thanks to Couchtown Coffee. And we'll check you next week. Peace.